get stuck going to different internet places, but we are here for the weekly live. You will see people walking around me because I'm in a public co-sharing space right now, but I am here with my friends and other agents. And what we are going to do today, based on last week's live, we decided that we're going to hop on and do live reactions to the worst Instagram and TikTok reels that are out there talking about Index Universal Life. I just kind of went through and opened them up and watched like the first couple seconds and saw the people that were reviewing. I haven't gone through anything yet, but I can tell you right now, my blood pressure is already going up. And these guys, I swear they're trying to get me in a hospital. Like the hospital guys, the hospital around here is a lot further of a drive than it is back in Arizona. So, it is what it is, but we're gonna go through this and what the I don't know, the framework or the process of this video today is going to be. I'm going to share a video, and we're not going to interrupt it in the middle. Okay, let's be chill. And if we have to watch it a second time to like go through it in detail, we will. But I wanna like everybody to watch it, take it in, and then on the second go around, if you got something you want to share, I'll let everybody just kind of let it rip. Sound good? Go. All right, good. Let's do it. Good. So let's go. So first video is, I think it's this guy. All right. So let me, if I expand full screen, do you see full screen? Did it get bigger?
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. Okay. All right, good. I'm just trying to get them how it works here. So, all right, let's go.
What $300 a month look like for a 30-year-old male put into an IUL? Let's look. So on the first year, you will have contributed $3,600. That's $300 per month. And you slide all the way to the right, you'll see that comes with a $91,000 death benefit. This is all assuming current market interest rates at 6.91%. But take a look, you do $300 a month until the age of 5. At age 65, contributions stop and you turn distributions on and you start withdrawing a roughly $61,000 per year tax-free. Slide all the way to the right and you'll see this also comes with a $670,000 death benefit at that current age that decreases as you get more distributions. By age 90, your total contributions were $126,000, but you have received $1.5 million in distributions. If you want to learn more how you can set this up for yourself, click the link in my bio and we'll help you out.
Okay.
What would $300?
Oh, slow down there, big guy. So, all right. So that's interesting. So I saw a lot of things. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to play it now. Well, first of all, anybody have anything they want to say to that beforehand?
I'm just going to shut down all my businesses. I'm going to turn off all income streams, and I'm going to dump all of my money into that right now.
Let's go.
That's an amazing product right there.
If it worked like that, I mean, 126,000 of total contributions of $1.5 million of distributions.
I don't know why I'm working so hard.
That's how they're positioning it, risk-free, basically, right? Like,
yeah.
Awesome. All right,
I found that video on TikTok. It was one of the very first videos if you search IUL. So a lot of people are seeing that video.
Really? That was one of the first like videos on IUL?
Yeah.
All right. So let's do this. I'm gonna expand again, and I'm gonna go here. I don't see. Let me see here. I want to see how many people have seen this video. I don't know. It's probably been reposted.
It only has 12 comments.
It's probably been
42 likes.
Yeah, it's probably been reposted a bunch of times. A lot of these guys will take them and then like repost them and put them back up and like whatever. But all right, so here's the deal. Clark's coming in. Clark, you here to participate? We're gonna make Clark sit here and participate in the IUL madness because he's always sending me TikTok videos too. So there's a couple things. I'm gonna watch it this time. I'm gonna comment on a couple things. If you guys see something, just start talking and I will pause the video.
A month look like for a 30-year-old male put into an IUL? Let's look. So on the first year, you will have contributed $3,600. That's $300 per month, and you slide all over to the right, you'll see that comes with
he says it comes with a $91,000 death benefit, but what he doesn't talk about is the fact that the cash value, you can see the account value is $3,012, but the surrender value is what really matters, right? That's $2,355, which isn't horrible. It's not the end of the world at that point in time, but it's not ideal. And so what's going to matter is as this policy gets older, when he starts talking about the
With a
income.
$91,000 death benefit.
Chris,
This is
Yeah.
I want to point out too, like this kind of exposes that this guy is pretty inexperienced. He doesn't know what he's doing, because if you're that close to 100, because the way the bands work, you would bump the band up to 100 in coverage. That way you can get a preferred rating, right? And you're going to save your clients a bunch of money by doing so. Most of these agents, they just think, oh, minimum. They just click a button that says minimum death benefit, maximum accumulation, but they don't really understand the intricacies of the policy. And he shows it right here. So
I love.
And he's about to go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love where he says non-guaranteed assumptions, current interest 6.91% end of year. And he just says current market interest rates. It's not an interest rate. It's like an average return rate in the market. It's an assumed, that's what it says, assumptions, and it's non-guaranteed. And I pretty much guarantee it will never, ever equal that. So when we look at these, I notice he focuses on kind of like the pie in the sky, best case scenario number of 6.91% average returns every single year with no down years. This shows no down years, right? Which is not the end of the world while you're saving money, right? Because he's like a 30-year-old. So by the time you're 65, you save for 35 years. If you have down years in the years that you're contributing to the policy, it's not the end of the world. But where the wheels fall off is when you start taking distributions, and he's going to talk about that. So I'll pause it when we get there. Anybody else got anything else to say on this so far? No, it's good.
all assuming current market interest rates at 6.91%. But
By the way, they're not current market interest rates. That's like, there's nothing current about it's just that's what they're currently assuming. Like, and so it just shows how loose these people are with their languaging, and that matters. It just shows a lack of understanding, as you said earlier.
I mean, when you even say market, like, what are you talking about? Market.
No.
Such a broad term.
He's trying to sound smarter than he is. That's really what it comes down to.
It's an average rate of return based on a particular index that you select in the IUL. It's not interest rates. So if interest rates go lower, like that, can it have an indirect impact on the indexes? Sure, but the way that the IUL is credited is by the indexes.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah,
And
that number's calculated with a hypothetical historical look back. I mean, that's how it's calculated. It's what it's called.
Yep. Yeah. Well, depending on the index. If it's the S&P, it's not hypothetical. They're doing a real look back, but past performance is not indicative of future success. And when you talk about the 6.91%, that's not actually the returns in the policy. That's what the index is average. You still got to back out costs and charges and all that stuff out of that, right? And so
and the market does not go up every single year either.
Right. Yeah. This shows
what an IUL shows.
Exactly, which is jacked up.
And there's a huge difference between actual and average rate of return. And
which
you need to know how big of a difference that is.
100%. And all these IUL agents are saying that you can't lose money in an IUL, right? And the reality is you can lose money in an IUL, especially in retirement when you're taking distribution.
Our friend Brian joined us.
Oh, that's fun. Cool. So we'll get to that.
Take a look. You do $300 a month until the age of 65.
Hold on.
At age 65, contributions.
So he starts saying at 65, you stop contributing, which, by the way, the zero, when that says zero there, I can't read the asterisk, so I'm not going to whatever, but it doesn't mean there's no premium. So with an IUL, you can never pay the policy up. There is still a premium. That just means out of your cash flow, you're not paying the premium out of cash.
Yeah.
And it shows that you have this illustration, or that the income is going. And then
stop, and you turn distributions on, and you start withdrawing a roughly $61,000 per year tax-free. Slide all.
First of all, you're not withdrawing the money from the policy. You're taking loans from the policy. And what you can see here, man, I don't know. Can I zoom in here? Nope. It won't let me.
I don't think so.
Bummer. So if you look here, I can see it right down. Can you see my cursor where my cursor is going back and forth?
Yeah.
So right there, 1.729 is 1.729 million is the account value. You got 248,000 is the surrender value. So the account value minus the surrender value is the outstanding loan balance. And so this shows a positive growth, assuming 6.91%, right? And so what went on loaned money, that 1.5 million of roughly of outstanding loans, it's assuming a positive arbitrage of 50 basis points based on regulation AG 49A that, release that came out that allows these illustrations to be run like that. But in reality, you have $1.5 million, and on that $1.5 million, what's half a percent on that is like, $7,500 of positive arbitrage every single year is what it's illustrated at. But in all actuality, $7,500 I think is what it comes out to. But if you really look at what happens, well, let's say it's a 5% loan rate. I can't see what it is, but I think it's probably ballpark what it is at this point in time. That's 5% of 1.5 million is $75,000. And so what happens is that $75,000 has to be paid because we have to look at the insurance costs. We have to look at all the other fees in the policy. Those fees don't go away. They're just getting covered by the positive arbitrage and what we call the credits being created by the indexing credits. And if those credits do not get attributed to the policy and are not increasing the surrender value, well, then they are actually, it's getting paid from somewhere. And so this 248 would go down by up to, $75,000, right? So if that happens, what's 75,000 of 250? I mean, they say that you can't lose money in an IUL. Well, you can't lose money, so to speak, while you're contributing. But as soon as you start taking income, it's a completely different game. And a lot of people have been talking about the fact that, these things are safe. Well, guess what? This is assuming a positive return every single year. I don't know how long into it this is, but, I promise you this will not perform the way that it's illustrated here. And the likelihood of this thing falling apart during retirement before he's 75 years old, when the overloan protection rider kicks in, is very high. And if that happens before he's 75, he's going to have a taxable event, right? And so that's going to be absolutely horrible. So this is being sold.
Chris, not to mention, it's even with the positive arbitrage. If you look at the chart here, it's actually losing value anyway because of the cost of insurance on top of it. So if you look over at the 4.5 and you notice there's no money in this policy, it just shows how fickle this thing really is. Like you're talking about a few percentage points and you have a totally different picture. And by the way, this company is actually known for the older clients getting a lower cap rates and stuff than the brand new clients.
Yeah. And not to mention that this is one of the frustrating things about IUL illustrations when they show income is the ridiculous amount of income that it shows. I think it shows when this person starts taking income, I can't see it too well, but it looks like the surrender value is like right around 500,000 or whatnot, something like that. And he's showing $61,000 in income.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's over 10%.
Yeah, I mean, that's just
of the account value. Like that is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, maybe these things can work a little bit better if we're not doing stuff like that, where, maybe they're taking $30,000 of income each year. Maybe that obviously that would significantly reduce the risk. But when they show, like, does it seem feasible that we're going to take out 10%? 8 to 10% of our, like, would you do that with a 401k? Would you take out 8 to 10% every single year in a 401k?
Well, Curtis Ray, we're going to hear from later, is going to tell you that 401ks are not good and IULs are way better distribution vehicles than 401ks, and that's why they can do it.
Yeah. I have an issue with like the amount of income that they show taking. I had an agent show me in an illustration that he ran for me, like comparing my whole life policy, that I could get $212,000 per year every single year starting at 65. It's just like a ridiculous number. It's a great question. I guess I'm just an idiot. I really should have. I should have signed on the dotted line immediately and not done any of my own research.
That's awesome. Let's address this. Brian's got some comments going on. I can never ignore Brian completely here. We gotta give Brian some love because he's at least here and doing his thing. The FG band is 150,000 to get 4.75% fixed and 12% cap instead of 11 and 4.5%. Anyone between 18 and 44. Okay, whatever. I don't think those numbers are going to make a big enough difference to. I mean, it's obviously beneficial, but it's not going to make it so much better that it's going to make a difference from a long-term perspective. Well, these policies are currently beating those illustrated rates. The return this year was 12%. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
He says, let's talk about that. So here's the deal. When I get so much kickback right now from these guys that are like, oh, cap rates are going up, and you said cap rates would go down, and this and that, like whatever. It's like, sure. I said it. Bobby Samuelson said, we both said, that we thought cap rates were going to go down. And there's a lot of reasons for that mathematically, economically, just the economic environment that we're in, the federal funds rates, inflation, like all these different things. And it was kind of, what I find hilarious is that you have these agents that are talking about why IUL is so amazing. They're basically saying that it's because the economy is super volatile. It's because of, the government controlling your money and, take control of your money and all these different things that if you really look at the why they say IUL is so powerful, and then you look at the other side of the spectrum of like, all right, what's going to happen? If all those problems are there, then what's going to happen is interest rates are going to continue to go up. It's going to get pressures on markets. I think, we're living in this bubble, that the economy is overinflated. I think it's about to implode to a certain extent, at least for a certain period of time. And when we look at it through that lens, it's like the cap rates could go to 30%. I don't care, because if they do, that means interest rates have gone so high and there's so much pressure on the market that the markets are going to go negative. So who gives a crap? You know what I mean? And by the time the interest rates go down, the cap rates will come back down. And when the market goes up, everything, like at the end of the day, there's no free lunch with IUL. And if you think that they're going to give you a better return, this is like, if you think IUL companies are going to give you a better return in your policy, give you the same predictability, of result, and they're going to be able to do so while paying life insurance agents higher commission rates, which they do. I know a lot of IUL agents will say that whole life pays more commission when really the base contract rates for IUL are about 30% higher, if not a little more than the base contract rates of whole life insurance. That's just a fact, and it's not arguable. So in what world are they able to give you more flexibility, you more predictability and safety, higher commissions to the agent, and like, it's like, you believe that story, like I can't help you. You know what I mean? Like, my guess is the other thing too, around the 80 range. Like, if you believe that story, like
I think Chris, the big thing here is like a lot of people focus on a year-to-year basis, right? Like, okay, cool, because it does happen, right? Like, there are going to be cases where you get a high rate of return on any given year.
Sure.
It can definitely happen, and it will happen again, right? Like, let's not kid ourselves. But I think when you just look at the foundational pieces, you have to just there's fundamentals, right? Like, you can invest. People invested in GameStop, right? Failing company, but people made a bunch of money. It can happen. Doesn't mean it's a good investment, right? So,
very true.
I think this way too. If you were to invest your money straight into the S&P and you bought these companies directly, if those companies win, you win, right? You're on the same page. If you go through a financial advisor, right, or they get a fee, right? An investment advisor. Let's go investment advisor. They get a fee. So if you win, again, they win, right? But in the insurance business, that's not necessarily the case, right? Like, these companies will actually profit more. If you look at the term policies, what do they count on? They count on not paying out, right? 1% of terms pay out. And this is an annual renewable term designed where they get all the contractual guarantees, right? Everything they can change on their end to either control your participation in that market, control the costs, control the fees, control all these different things. So they own all the levers. So it doesn't make sense to, if you're going to invest in the S&P, you want to put a middleman in that is on your side and profits when you profit, or when you win, the market wins. How much sense does it make to put a middleman in that profits when you lose? And that's the big thing for me that drives me nuts. It's just like, you got to pay attention to the contract, because I can guarantee you all these videos are only going to show the numerical page, right? The detail page. They're not going to show you what's in the contract. And it's like, read your dang contract.
Just read
That
it.
is so true. And I apologize if I got background noise here, because they got like an air compressor going outside my window here. Not the ideal setup for me today, but yeah, that's 100%. Like they're looking at best case scenario. And the thing is, when you look at that, and this, if you go to lifeproductreview.com, Bobby Samuelson did a really amazing article on that. When you look at the current illustrated assumption, according to regulation, it has about a 50% chance to beat it and a 50% chance to go worse than it every single year. Yet it shows it being positive every single year, like at this positive result. And so the thing is, on what the illustrations don't show, and why you can never create calculators, like Brian and these other guys that call me and they're like, I've got calculators and I've tested it. I'm like, I'm sorry, I just don't believe you're that smart. If you were, you would have gone to school to be an actuary and you would be doing it right now. Like if that were really your ability, unique ability. Because the bottom line is, on negative years, you don't just lose the money, you have increased costs that go along with it that over time compound and do not get calculated into the illustration. And when you back test just the money side and the return side, the index side, you don't know how to back test all the different expenses and fees and everything that goes along with it. That's just the reality of the situation. And you don't account for the fact that they can change those fees along the way. So, all right. At least Brian's saying, yeah, I mean, the income is way too much. That's for sure. But he's saying the client's putting themselves at risk. No, the client's not putting themselves at risk. The clients are following the advice of the person who's creating the illustration, setting the expectation that they can be assuming that this result that this policy is going to get them this result. And so this is the problem, is that this is bad marketing. It's misrepresentation of how the product actually works and what people should expect. And the problem is, if this is what they're thinking they're going to do, well, then they're only going to behave for the next 35 years and save the amount of money that they think they're going to be able to get as a result from an income perspective on the back end. And if they get there and they go, oh, well, I only saved that much because I thought it would produce this result. And then he's saying, oh, they're putting themselves at risk. No, they're doing what they have to do in the moment because this is the strategy that they followed, and so it's a lack of education by the agent. Now, I know Brian would say, like, I would never do that to my client, but that doesn't solve the problem. The fact of the matter is, you're still going to be taking it out with loans. You're still going to be injecting more risk into your retirement. They say you can't lose money on an IUL, but in this one example, just as an example, he had $1.5 million in loans, right? And in the $1.5 million of loans on a negative year, 5% of 75,000, 75 of 250 is about a 25-30% loss of cash value. So even if it weren't a big negative year, a flat year on the S&P 500 is going to create a 20 to 25% loss, right, in cash value, and then that's where the wheels start to come off of these. I always tell people the problem that I have with it is a misrepresentation on the front end, and the reality is that people are going to be whacked on the back end, and they're not going to know until it's far too late.
Yeah, Chris, you didn't even include the cost of insurance, because if you look at the tabular, it's going down 20 grand. So that's 95,000 actually. More like 33%.
He's saying the loan doesn't come from the cash value. So when you take a loan from the policy, you're borrowing against the policy, Brian. So your surrender value is going to go up. Surrender value is going to go down because the loan cost is going to. Oh, I lost everybody. Everybody
Yeah,
back? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, you're back.
Nope. Uh-oh. Everybody back? I'm back?
Lost to
I'm
being
back?
in the jungle.
Okay. So
Yeah,
as you
you're back.
take more loans, it increases the loan value, which is good. Oh, no. How about now? Is it better? Better now? Looks like Matt's moving. I see people
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
There we go. Much better.
The surrender value is not indicative of the growth, but the surrender value is what leads to lapsed policies. That's the bottom line. The surrender value is the accumulation. Oh my gosh, Brian. We'll talk about this in our debate. Like as the value of the loan goes higher, and you take a loan for income, it's going to increase your loan amount. Your accumulated value can go high, but like the bottom line is it's going to increase your surrender value. Or I mean, it's going to decrease your surrender value. And that's going to lead to a lapse policy. There's no way around that. There's zero way around that. That's why these things run into lapse issues. Right? And it's not like, I mean, it's a big deal because you run out of money if you're 75. But if you're, 65 or maybe 70 and you run out of money, now you have a big taxable event because most of, not with every company, but most of the companies, their overloan protection rider doesn't kick in until you're 75, or it's only effective after you're 75 years old. If it lapses beforehand, then you're screwed. Brian, if I were wrong, there wouldn't be so many lapses on these things.
Right.
Like,
Chris, I got to share. This
Brian,
is
for you to tell me, I mean, maybe we're speaking semantics a little bit and we're using different languaging, and okay, whatever. I don't care about that. What I care about is for you to say that for you to take policy loans, and when you have a negative market returns or flat market returns, and you have increased interest rate expenses, to think that that's not going to reduce the surrender value of the policy is freaking outlandish. Like, for you to not think that there's a correlated reaction there, Brian, is just completely disconnected. Go ahead, Michael. You had something.
Yeah, Chris, this is actually exactly what got me to stop selling IUL is this reality. You look at that situation right there. You're at about 270, right? And if you lose that 75,000 credit, plus you were already going down 20, so that's a 95,000. So now you're about let's call it 180. If that client needs money the next year, let's say they take 80 grand. Well, if you have a second bad year, that policy is done, right? And that's when I realized, and when I woke up to the fact that it really only takes a couple of bad years where you don't get a credit to lap some of these policies. That's what really alarmed me, and I was like, holy crap, I cannot sell this the way I'm selling it, right? And that's the reality is like, and unfortunately, I do believe I like Brian. So I know Brian and we've become friends, and I know he wouldn't advise his clients to do that. But the reality is there's all these other people like this TikTok that are telling people to do that. And that's the real issue that we have. So, yeah, I mean, two bad years, and that's insane. These policies get over leveraged, and that's the way they're promoted and and marketed. It's insane.
Yeah. Yep. He's saying if you don't over leverage the policy past 80%, you can afford 4 negative bad years. That's just not like to say that with a blanket statement without considering the age and the cost of insurance and all these different things that go into the equation. There's just like that you can afford maybe 4 bad years when you're young, but when you're old, and
that is what I have a problem with.
Loan balance. It depends on the outstanding loan balance. It depends on like so many variables that come into it. When do the 4 bad years happen? Like all these different things. That's what it has to do.
So forget all the technical jargon and the numbers and properly structured and all that. That's what I have a problem with. he would probably tell that to a client. Long as we keep this under 80%, you could afford 4 bad years, but yet the company has the ability to change almost every rule of the game. Like it's the certain statements, the absolute statements that these IUL agents say to clients, thinking that they're going to be okay, yet the whole thing could be changed. The whole game could be changed. The strategy can be changed. The economy can be changed. And it's just beyond me. I can't even believe that's even a thought.
Well, it's interesting because he just said, like, it's just math. If the market goes down, then the next year it's going to go up. And so it's just math. It's going to make up for it. But the reality is with these policies, first of all, even the no cap policies have what's called a no risk rate, and there's fees into it that from a long-term perspective. I mean, if they're super actively managed, can it be navigated? I'll give the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, they could be in a perfect world if you have a ninja working for you and like in and out, and Brian's going to try to convince you he's that ninja that can do that and like all these different things. But the reality is, like, now instead of you taking accountability and responsibility for the results in your life, you are putting that success on somebody else again. So that goes against all the principles that I believe in, right? Like, I don't want my risk and my success to be based on this one product, right? Like, that goes against everything that life insurance companies stand for and what they're good at, right? So I don't want to use a life insurance company for that risky component when that's not really how it's being sold, you know what I mean? And it's not where their track record of success is. And so now all of a sudden, for me to go do that, I'd have to like bank on the fact that Brian is going to be there my whole life. Otherwise, I got to become an expert at it. And I tell you what, I had a bunch of IULs personally. I got rid of them because of what I know, you know? So anyway.
So I'd like to ask Brian a question, if that's all right.
Well,
for me, like this, you good?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. And really any IUL agent, because this, for me, ended the IUL versus whole life debate, whatever, is why on earth would somebody buy an IUL for upside potential, downside protection in the market, when they can do almost the same exact thing in a whole life product without all the issues of an IUL? You can get upside potential, downside protection in the market with a whole life product. So what is the point of IUL? Why roll the dice with something that has so many things that can be changed, so many things that can go wrong, how it needs to be actively managed, like very stringently? Why take all the chances with that to get that upside potential, downside protection in the market when you could do it in a whole life product, not have any of those issues? That's my question.
Yeah, valid question. And the motorcycle behind me is asking the same thing.
For me, it's a foundational issue, right? Like, you can build let's face it, indexing is super powerful, super powerful, right? It's a great strategy. It's not the strategy that I have the issue with, like Matt's hitting on. It's the foundation. Like, you build your house on a rock, you don't build your house on sand, right? And that's like a biblical principle. And so it's like, okay, we have this strategy, but do we want to build it on a contract that has a lot of issues where the other party can change everything in the contract, or do we want to build it on a rock, right? And that's really the principle for me.
So I want to address Brian's comment here really quick. He says you got statements showing 61% in a single year. If you're selling an IUL based on getting 61% in a single year, you are extremely misleading your clients. Like, hey, look at all this amazing return that I got in this one single year.
All right,
how many times is that going to happen? And that's like saying, hey guys, I this latest cryptocurrency that launched a month ago, I just made 1,000% on it. I'm this expert at cryptocurrency trading now. You should follow me. You should dump all your money into this thing now, because look at all these amazing returns that I got in this one single year. So sure, is the potential there to get 61%? I suppose, fine. But is that, like, how often is that going to happen? And are you really selling an IUL based on a single year getting 61%? That's absolutely ridiculous, man. I'm sorry. And not to mention, like, can you get 61%? I'm not even really sure, if you're talking about like just the cash value overall or whatnot. But the way that the rider works with whole life products is you can double your dividend. So if one year I'm getting, let's say a $15,000, $20,000 dividend, and the market goes up really good, well, I just made 100% on my dividend. I'm pretty cool with that. Like, I don't need to be chasing potential 61% returns on any given year, where at least to the point where I'm going to make major long-term decisions. Like this is a long-term product. It's not based on any specific individual year. It's a long-term product. So how many times are you going to hit 61? Like I'm just that's
well, I think
too much.
I think more importantly is, you know, they pump up the cap rates and the par rates on a lot. For most of these companies do this. They pump them up in the early years, and then they consider you an old block of business. And then all of a sudden you get these lower cap rates and par rates. And so, yeah, you might get that on the front end, but when you're in retirement, what are the chances you get that kind of year again when the insurance company is going to change things on you? So
most of these IUL agents haven't sold IULs long enough to understand what you're even talking about. That's the funny part. I asked most of these guys, how long have you been selling it? Oh, like this is my second year. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
You know, and I think if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, I mean, a lot of what I see, the arguments that people selling IUL, the arguments are based on statistics and facts, and it's very granular, and it can look good on a spreadsheet. But if you zoom out, I mean, Brian in the comments section here, for every one of Brian, how many WFG agents are there? You know, I don't know if Brian's on TikTok and how many views he's got with the video we just watched. It's got tens of thousands of views more than likely. So in the grand scheme of things, yeah, IULs can work, and on a spreadsheet they can look good, but in the real lives of people who own these things, there's going to be a catastrophe for a lot of people in the future, and they're not even aware of it.
Yeah, I think sorry guys, I lost connection. Now I'm coming back and I see some of Brian's comments. I don't know what you guys all said, but here's the deal. Here's the deal. Like, I'm looking at this thing, S&P uncapped at a 10% spread, 27% S&P minus 10% spread. That's a 17% return. Except for on the fact that on the years where the S&P does 10%, you make nothing, right? You get nothing, right? And that's most years. I hate to break it to you. Or on the years that S&P does 13, 14, you get 4. And the illustration is showing 6.91 in this, you know, in this scenario, right? Like, so there's always a catch on these cap rates. And I've done a lot of videos on this, right? So at the end of the day, the thing that people need to understand is it doesn't matter if the market is uncapped, if the index is uncapped, or if it's capped, or if it's got a high participation rate or a low participation rate. The only things that matter are the fact that you have an option budget, you have an option cost, and then you use those two things together. And if you're buying the S&P, whether you have a cap or no cap, there are levers in there because the cost, the input doesn't change and the costs don't change. You know, the budget doesn't change, the costs don't change. So therefore, to think that you're going to be able to get some grandiose, greater result with the same option strategy just because they say it's uncapped and there's nothing else on the back end protecting the people, the powers that be, you're going to tell me that the insurance company somehow has this magical deal where you're going to have the same budget and the same options cost, and they're going to be able to give you all these great returns and there's no catch from a long-term perspective. And I don't disagree with you, Brian, that from a year-to-year basis, you can have a massive year, but you're going to pay for that on an annual cost expense fee that goes with that strategy, because they know from a long-term perspective, they you know, there's these costs that are associated with it. And this is all built into it. They call them no risk rates. They have spread charges, spread fees, whatever you want to call it. Every company calls it a little different. And so it's like all this stuff exists. There's no free lunch. That's my problem with this, is that they're positioned like they're this like amazing thing. And that 61%, sorry, but it's bull crap. Like, yeah, you could have it, but that is like finding a unicorn in the wilderness, you know, amongst a bunch of horses. You know, it's like you're not gonna he's saying you can anticipate the bad years and just change it out to a flat index during that year. Like, okay, so now you're like a market timer all of a sudden, which probably goes against what you talk about. You know, you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth. You say use this indexing strategy so you can just weather the bad years and make it, but all of a sudden now you're going to tell me you're a great market timer. Like, that goes against everything, right? Like,
Well, I thought IUL was so great at protecting you from the downside part of the market anyway. So why do we have to time anything?
Right. And
why do we need to anticipate anything?
So
and that doing that.
That once again, it goes to the fact, if somebody goes to the point and they say, I want to manage my own policy and I understand it enough to do it on my own without an agent, and I can go into my back office and I can manage my thing, and I don't need Brian, I don't need Chris, I don't need Matt, I don't need any agent, and they can do it, and they're comfortable taking that risk, well then God bless them. Have fun. Good luck.
Agreed.
You know? But if they are relying on the agent, which is what 99.9% of these clients are doing, and that's the problem. That's the problem, you know? And that's the problem with all these videos, you know? I'm going to sit here and listen, Brian and I, you know, disagree on a lot of things and about like, he overhypes like how good these things are. Like, I mean, just the fact that he's been like, do you have anything showing a 61% return? Like, dude, that was like all these 61% returns and all these people that show these results. It's like, they cherry picked like right at the bottom of COVID and right at the end of that good year, the March to March time that, you know, at the end in 2020 when it got really bad, and then 2021 when it corrected, when everybody thought it was going to get bad and the market just blew up, you know, that point to point period, the returns were incredible, you know? So if you participated in that, but that's like such an outlier scenario. I'm talking about getting predictable results, not using hype from one example of a policy that's probably not likely to repeat itself in the history of our life to overhype somebody into buying a strategy they don't understand. You know, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
This year must be cherry picking again with 14 to 18% returns. This like 14 to 18% is not that much when you then next year, you know, you have zero, then boom. If you have a 0% the next year, you're talking about now you have a 7% average. You have a 9%. Okay. And then if you have a 2% year after that, now you're down to like a 6% average. It's not 1 year of 14 to 18% doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's arguing that IULs won't grow. Like you won't have good years. You won't have growth in your accumulation, your cash value. Nobody's arguing that, but we're talking about a long-term product. And in this particular example on this TikTok video, it's showing over 10% income being taken from this thing. It never has a down year. Like there's so many misleading half-truths in the illustration itself. Like, again, you know, it's, you can get good returns on any given year, but what happens when you're 70, 75 years old, you've got $1 million loan balance or a $500,000 loan balance, you have that down year. How many of those does it really take to blow up the policy? And here's the thing, not even just lapse the policy, but now they don't have anywhere near the amount of income available to them that you showed them. That's another problem. So maybe you can manage it to where the policy doesn't lapse, but in this gentleman's example, are they going to be able to take $61,000 for their entire life like you're showing them? Probably not even close. And if they've made major financial decisions throughout their life based on that illustration, you're now screwing with people's money when they need it the most. I'm not okay with that, man.
I concur.
And I got one thing to add. Here's the point we really haven't discussed, I don't think, too much foundationally. We can argue rate of return. We can be arguing about, you know, this year, it's 61% and 14 to 18%. That's not the reason we're doing whole life. We're not trying to chase big returns. We're not trying to put our money in there to grow it as big as we can grow it. We're doing it for a different foundational reason. And so we're not even talking apples to apples here when we're talking, why would somebody get into an IUL versus why would somebody do an overfunded whole life policy? So I appreciate that Brian's got some things that he's agreeing with us on, but you know, he's trying to justify his position quite a bit through some of these comments. And the foundational reason we're doing whole life is a savings alternative. It's a place to store capital, to do other things. We're not trying to grow our money like crazy. And we're not, you know, if we want to cherry pick the good return years, well, what happens here at some point, Brian, when we have a down year and we have a negative 30% in the markets and your, you know, 0% floor hits, and we have all the cost of insurance to come out of that, well, the whole life is going to continue to compound ahead of that. So it works both sides, and we're not trying to compare one given year to one given year, and one in an IUL, one in a whole life. It's about the long term. What is the product's going to do long term? And I guarantee the compounded consistency inside of a whole life will probably outperform an IUL. Now, it may not do that all the time. There's a lot of variables that could play into that. But clients that we work with want to know consistency. They want a solid foundation. They want to know the predictability. They have the control. They don't want to have to worry about looking over your allocations every year and wondering, what do we need to do to shift around to not be in a position that's going to blow up the policy? So we're really not talking apples to apples here. And we want to make sure that, for us, the clients are doing what's in alignment with them. And so many that we talk to don't want the variables. They don't want the risk. They want to go the other direction.
Yeah,
Very well said, Jeff.
I think just to get back on point too, is like, we're not trying to argue the returns. We're trying to bring to light this bad marketing straight up lies, right?
Yep.
And so, and I actually know Brian 100% agrees with this, right? So we want to bring this bad marketing to light. People are being misled. The product's being misrepresented. And that's why we're sharing these videos, right? Because we can break these videos down and you can see what people are trying to sell. And quite frankly, it should be illegal what a lot of these people are selling.
Well, and at the end of the day, in talking to Bobby Samuelson, this is kind of what we came to, when we were going back and forth. And one of the first videos I ever did with him was basically like, let's say potentially best case scenario, IUL has a little upside potential compared to whole life. Let's say it's 0.5 percentage point, like 50 basis points from a long-term perspective, that upside potential genuinely exists. Like it's possible.
For sure.
The question is, on the downside possibility as well. With any upside potential, there is downside potential, right? It's not, and with IUL, there's not the downside protection that they claim there to be, especially when you get to distribution years. And so that's the problem, right? Is like you're getting a little bit, and if people understood that you're getting a little bit of upside potential, but you're injecting a lot more risk into your finances, personal finances, and you realize that is where the problem, for me, really exists. So we spent about 40 minutes on that video.
Actually, I'm Brian, not that video.
The video on Brian. I know, Brian, way to go. See, we're here trying to expose bad agents, Brian. You're distracting us. Speaking of bad agents.
You think we can get Wolfie on here?
No, I want to get Curtis Ray on first.
Okay, we'll get Curtis Ray.
We're going to get Curtis on.
He's my
first.
favorite.
Do you guys see him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And let's try to do this in 10 minutes, okay? Can we do it? Maybe?
Yep.
Yes.
Curtis, Roth IRA versus MPI. Go.
Let's do a side-by-side. So why does everyone like the Roth IRA? Let's look at the pros. Tax-free retirement income, growth potential to the stock market, and low fees, potentially, unless it's managed by a financial advisor. Now let's look at the cons. Access penalties, no early retirement potential, no life insurance risky, and this pathetic 4% rule, which tells you if you have $1 million in your Roth IRA, you should only spend in retirement $40,000 a year. Now let's look at the Roth Destroyer, the MPI Secure Compound Interest Account. MPI Pros, also tax-free retirement income, growth potential to the stock market, low fees, life insurance, no access penalties, early retirement potential, high contribution.
Hold on, what's that say? MPI results are based on 6.4% growth rate plus a 4% relock feature for preferred health rate. So 4% relock feature, you know what that means, guys?
What does that mean?
That means when you're taking money from a loan through the policy, you're basically reinvesting it into more MPI strategy. Take a $10,000 policy loan, buy another $10,000 policy, and it's assuming that positive arbitrage every single year inside the policy.
Oh my gosh, this is insane.
And just so you know, guys,
4% growth, 4% on that money he's borrowing from the policy. Do you understand that?
and MPI is just a made-up marketing name.
Yeah.
Okay,
for sure.
it's nothing. It doesn't even actually. It's just an IUL.
Yeah, it's an IUL with a really dangerous loan strategy to buy more insurance, which in the past used to be called hyperfunding, and it's illegal. I don't know how Mutual of Omaha's letting this clown do it, honestly. But let's keep hearing them out real quick.
Contribution limits, security against stock market risk, and up to 10% income potential. Absolutely destroying the Roth IRA with a projected
up to 10% income potential. If like up to potential, it's like on paper, it looks good. I could tell you, I could give you up to 80% return. Like it's just not real. Like it's just not real.
$100,000 of tax-free income. If you'd like more information, send me a direct message. I'm Curtis Ray. Always be compounding.
Do yourself a favor and don't.
There is literally nothing about his strategy that is actually compounding.
Nothing.
When you see an IUL illustration, it shows uninterrupted compound growth every single year for the entire life of the policy based on a stock market index. That is not going to happen. Like he's got it in the name of his stupid product. He says, "Oh, always be compounding." When you have 0 years, that interrupts the compound growth. Yeah. Not to mention you take out all the fees and loan balances, your 10% income that you're taking, dude.
That's the funny part. Even WFG, they stress the importance of not losing from your compounding base, but they're selling a product you can actually lose from your compounding base. I just don't understand. Whole year, you actually lost money in your IUL. Congratulations. Really compound.
Yep. Yeah. If you absolutely want to blow up your finances in retirement, send him a DM.
Yep. I agree. All right. Before we go, let's do one last one here. Okay. Wolfie. I'm doing this for Matt.
We gotta watch
Wolfie. Let me see here. In simple terms, I got this one right here. All right, here we go. Can you see this one?
Oh, this is good.
Let me simplify. Hey, God. Matt, look at you. You commented. way to engage, buddy. All right, here we go.
Let me simplify infinite banking for you. The easiest way that I can explain infinite banking is this. Imagine in one glass of water, you have $100,000, which showcases your liquidity, the cash that you've put inside of the policy. And on the other side is the money that you've borrowed to go invest into real estate. So how infinite banking works is like so. Inside of your policy, you're growing at an average rate of 8%. Now this is liquid, meaning that if you wanted to cash out the policy, this is yours. The smart way to do it is through loans. Because you're growing at an average rate of 8%, the insurance company can collateralize 50% of that liquidity into a loan that's costing you 5%. Inside of the policy, you're earning 3% on money that you've already pulled out. So now with this $50,000 you have here, you can invest into real estate, you can go buy a business, and this is why infinite banking has the ability to allow you to leverage the same dollar twice.
That was supposed to simplify it.
That was so
I'm confused. When I watched that, I said, I don't even understand.
I don't think he knows what he's talking about. Like
really, what gives that away? Oh my God, that was bad.
I met that guy in person one time, and I was at this networking event, and we all went around and like talked about what we did. And I didn't say I did infinite banking. I just talked about, cash value life insurance, whatever. And then at the end, he went like towards the end and he's like, I do infinite banking. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I met a guy that does infinite. What are the odds of that? And so at the end, I go up to him and I'm like, hey, like you do infinite banking. It's awesome. Like who do you write with? And he's like, oh, I write IUL. And I'm like, oh, so you don't do infinite banking? He's like, oh, no, I do. And I go, well, no, you don't. Like, if you sell IUL, you don't do infinite banking because you need to use whole life for infinite banking. He's like, no, you don't. And I'm like, well, if you actually read Nelson Nash's book, you'd know that you actually do. And you can call it what you want, but it's not infinite banking. You just don't understand it. You just obviously don't know what you don't know, and it's okay. And he's like, actually, it's evolved, and you just don't know what you don't know, and all these things. And so we started getting into it, and I just kind of agreed to disagree because I didn't want to insult the guy that was hosting the event and get out of control. But like, it's so funny to me that these guys, they have no idea what they're doing. I mean, it just in that video, it's obvious he doesn't understand what infinite banking is. And to say that his policies are averaging 8%, there's not a policy around on anything that compliantly you can say 8%. So let's talk about that, because I can't see how these insurance companies are allowing clowns like him to go around and market that publicly. I mean, that one video, guys, has 452 likes. I can't see how many views, or shares, but my guess is probably got 30,000 views typically for something like that.
Yep.
Like, that's dangerous. How the insurance companies are not cracking down on people like that. And that's the problem. I know he's a G agent. I know he's not structuring them properly. I've seen illustrations from people from his team, not his specifically, but for the same organization that he works with. So they're all trained the same way. We all know how that works. Like they're doing the same thing, all target funded garbage, so it's like, it's just the hype machine of this content that like, he's basically saying it's going to average 8%. You're going to pay 5%. So you're going to earn 3% of money that you're borrowing. I don't know what the different cups of water have to do with anything. Is he saying like, I don't know.
That, it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating to watch that kind of stuff about infinite banking too, because it gives it kind of a black eye a little bit. Because infinite banking is an unbelievably powerful financial strategy when you do it right. And I'll tell you this, guys, if anybody is selling you on the infinite banking concept to get positive arbitrage in the policy, run. That is not why you do this. Like I'm implementing infinite banking right now in my life. It is awesome. And it's got nothing to do with positive arbitrage. Can you get it? Sure, it's possible. But that's not why we set it up. And the other side of that, the other side of that argument, when they're talking about the arbitrage and the different, like earning the interest rate in the policy versus what you pay on the policy loan, it's like what the argument I'll hear is that, this is why whole life sucks for infinite banking. I've heard Curtis Ray say that, and it's because you'll only earn 4%, but you'll have to pay 5 or 6% in policy loans. Anybody who says that has a fundamental misunderstanding about the difference between simple and compound interest. I've run the math on this. I could pay 8% on a policy loan and only earn 4% in my whole life policy. And in 5 years, I will actually still be ahead in my policy because my policy is getting uninterrupted compound growth versus the policy loan it's simple interest. So it's being paid down it applies to a lower and lower balance. That makes a huge difference. So we're not doing this for arbitrage. It's got nothing to do with infinite banking at all.
Totally. No, 100%, 100% right.
I've seen people like this clown too. I saw somebody's Facebook page. They're saying, "Oh, you're going to average 8 to 13%." Like it gets insane with some of these agents. And obviously, I think I'm not sure, Chris. I'm not sure, Chris, but I imagine they'd lose their license if this stuff was actually reported. But it's just the marketing is just overhyped. And you have people like this, and I wish, more people. The thing I see with IUL agents, they'll tell people like you, Chris, or like me, like, "Oh, you just don't know."
I know.
It's like it just makes me laugh because, like, no, bro, we were you. Mm-hmm. We were you. Like, you don't know.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's so bad. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me. Like sometimes, like somebody said it the other day, I responded, then I deleted my response because I felt bad. Like it was a little too abrasive, and it's just like, I don't know. Like for most of the people that make the comments, how I really feel and what I really want to say is, dude, I've forgotten more about IUL than you'll ever know in your life. Like, and it's hard, like it's frustrating, but all right, let's do this. I'm going to do this last one because it's Wolf and I just want to get him out of our system and see what happens here. And then we'll move on to somebody else next time.
So for example, let's just say your money is actually mirroring these indexes, right? Like S&P, Zebra, like Mosaic, to all these indexes you can choose from. Let's just say with the bonuses and higher participation rates, let's just say the average return you're making is about 10%. Right? Because on the low end, you're making 9, high end, you're making it about 11. So split the difference, 10. I have data to also show you as well, too. Like outside of the podcast, if you guys want to see it, like I can show you. So let's just say you're making 10%. Okay, first of all, that's tax-free.
I want to see
Second,
that data.
Once you want to borrow that money, let's just say it's costing you 5.5, okay, or 5%, right? Now you're paying 5% of that loan, but inside of the policy, you're making 10. So instead of the insurance company charging you 5 to then give you 10, they'll just credit you 5%. So now check it out. You're making 5% in your cash value, And now you have, for example, the $1 million that you pulled out to go invest into real estate. So at that point, you can choose where to invest the money that you have inside of the policy. And at that point, you can call it self-directing if you want.
If your policy is making 10% without thinking about it, I mean, unless you had a home run deal, right?
Yeah.
That would make sense if you're going to borrow against it. I personally, and I'm inexperienced in this field, so I didn't know a return would look like that for an IUL. I've always heard it's about a 4 to a 6%.
How you do it?
Oh my gosh.
Why did he cut that
So
part
this guy
out for his
just-
video?
This guy just makes up numbers as he goes, I guess, huh? 8,
Yeah.
10. What's next? 12?
12, 13, 14.
Wow. That's
Oh,
incredible.
man.
I think we lost
No
Chris.
puns in the second
Average rate of
video.
return.
What was that?
I said no puns in the second video. His first video, he had the glass of water and he said the money was liquid. I thought that was a pretty good pun.
The money was liquid. That was the purpose of the water.
It took me a minute.
Oh, look at that.
You should be a
All right.
comedian instead of an IUL agent.
A
Well,
liquid-
guys, we got through like 4 videos, and I got nothing.
we got plenty for the rest of the month. So
What I got out of the Wolf videos is the guy's just a crook. Like talking 10% averages, like he should lose his license. You know, I don't have time to respond a lot to that. Curtis Ray, I've done a lot of content on him. You know, it just that whole relock feature, what he touts.
we just lost him.
Lost him again. Chris, come back to us. While he's coming back, I noticed too, like the average rate of return that he was talking about changed. Like, which one is it? So his first video, you're talking about 8% average rate of return, and now the second one, you're talking about 10% average rate of return. Like, what are we doing here? You're just making shit up. At least be consistent when you're misleading people. Be consistent.
Yeah.
Well, there was probably that
An average rate of return.
61%. There's probably that 61%, month in between, Matt, that jumped the averages so much between the first podcast and the second one.
Yeah,
That's
you're probably right. I didn't account for that. He's probably a beneficiary of that.
He's the guy.
That totally makes sense.
I doubt it. He's a WFG guy. What do you think he's selling, Matt?
I'm back.
I don't know what product he's selling. He's probably Nationwide or National Life or F&G. Those are the main three. Or Transamerica.
Got it.
What's up, Chris? Welcome back.
Welcome.
Yep. So,
How's
all right,
your
guys.
blood
Well, my
pressure over there?
connection is hey, welcome back. This is just the way it is today, right? Like, hey, at least I made it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Honestly, like I've gotten so used to just like having.
He's got.
Yeah, needs to get that studio done.
And like a lot of the arguments that we present and the arguments that they present, here's my argument every single time. You can say whatever you want, and I can see how you can argue your point, but here's the reality. No matter what, if you actually objectively went through the negative attributes of an IUL to a client, they wouldn't buy.
Correct.
So just forget your argument, forget
Exactly.
this, what coulda, woulda. Let's just start there. If we just talked about what it is, just how it works, the client wouldn't buy. And the only reason the client buys is the agent totally disregarded the important stuff. That's my argument. So that's why I don't have to fight about, okay, that's cool, rate of return, all that. I don't even have to discuss that because I just bring it back to that. Well, let me tell you this. Did you say this to the client? Did you tell them that how this works? And of course, some agents will say, "Oh yeah, I tell every one of my clients." Call one of your clients.
Well,
let's have a talk.
Just like every
Matt,
agent
I've
says
gone
they should
through,
apply policies properly. Yeah, right. Okay.
I've helped people move over to whole life, and they think, "Oh well, should I just open this and keep this?" And I go through about 2 pages in the illustration, and dude, they're like, "Oh yeah, no,
You guys,
I'll get rid of it."
So we got to wrap this up. But you want to hear? I'm going to end with this story, and we'll talk about it maybe next time. We're dealing with a case right now where, and this is going to get litigious, I think. But we're dealing with a case where a guy had a 30-year-old Northwestern Mutual policy with $600,000 or something like that in cash value in it. The guy, and he was nearing retirement. The guy convinced him that it was a horrible policy, that IULs would perform better. He got him to 1035 exchange the Northwestern Mutual 30-year mature whole life policy and put it into a new IUL. 3 years in, his surrender value is half of what what the cash value was, and now he's like lost his money. And the guy's a pretty successful dude, and he's out for blood. So when
Good.
people wonder why we do what we do and what's happening, like it's stories like that, because those are happening every day.
That's sad.
Yep. So
That's just criminal.
Yep. Exactly.
What happened to ethics, man?
Yeah, very few people actually understand what they're getting into when they get an IUL. Very few. It's really unfortunate.
Yep. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for being here.
Violate like every ethics law in the book.
Yep. Exactly. Well, I'm having fun with this little series we're doing, guys. I hope everybody continues to be able to make it. Let's keep doing the Wednesday deal. We'll see you guys all next Wednesday. Financial architects in Chino, California, always pitching IUL and growing in popularity. All right, Jonathan Espinoza, send me their information, chris@life180.com. I'll check them out, and I'll go after them. That's what I do. So we'll go from there. All right, guys. Hopefully everybody at least had fun today. You know,
it was a blast. We'll have some more stuff next week.
So yeah, we're gonna keep the train going next week, and everybody have an amazing weekend, and we'll see you then.
Later.